Cristi, dear friend, welcome. Great to connect.
My pleasure is all mine.
Yeah, so good. How's life in Mexico?
Life in Mexico is a little slice of a dream, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
I got this amazing opportunity about a month ago to come down here. And, like many places in the world, Los Angeles is where I'm based and we're on complete lockdown. So to be in a place that um, is very open and free. And actually, the area that I'm in, there's actually not that many people. So it feels very safe. And I'm still able to share a little bit in the live form. I've actually gotten to teach my first live in person classes since February. Even though the numbers are small and everyone's socially distanced out, like my heart has just been like reactivated. The online portal's been amazing, but I almost forgot what it felt like to teach to in that human connection. So it's been a real gift for many reasons.
Yeah, good to hear. It must be such a trip. I mean, we've had it real good here as well. We've been able to interact and teach in community physically, actually in person, and it's been a gift. It's been a blessing, but it's also been such a trip being in this bubble,
Mhm.
observing the whole world from a real yeah, a bubble. We're kind of on the periphery of it here, and we've had it pretty good. But I, d- I can't help but feel and think like how this is taking its toll of, I mean, so many different industries, people isolated, the loneliness factor, community. I mean, yeah, so grateful for this online portal, but God, we just got to get in community. So it's interesting times in that regard, huh?
Absolutely. In the beginning phases, the first few months, I really struggled. Watching my work just disappear, like so many other people. Prior to COVID, I made 90% of my money on the road, traveling through Asia and Europe, and that all disappeared. I thought for a couple of months, I would have never imagined that it would be for 9 or however many. I've kind of lost count. But then I got into my own rhythm of like, okay, like let's just take this day by day. And I do live alone, so I was in isolation for a good part of it. And the strange blessing in it is I had signed a book deal at the very end of last year. So now all of a sudden I had all this time to write the book because I wasn't traveling, which was a whole nother mental struggle because, when you're in this fight or flight or you're in this panic, it's really difficult to be creative or to feel connected and grounded and, tapped into source and the place I know we both like to really teach and share from. So there were so many things happening, but then I've kind of like tipped the scales and was like, okay, like I'm making the best of this. And I'm getting rest, I'm sleeping more. And, I thought I was like, this was what the most interesting awakening coming here is I thought by the time I was coming here, like I was good. And then I arrived here and being in a place where it was spacious and I could breathe and I actually was having some in-person interactions, I realized how much stress and how much worry I had just gotten used to holding. And I
Mm.
literally the first 2 weeks almost collapsed with exhaustion and was
Wow.
just it was so wild. And I think just my new normal of the level of anxiety I was running at, just acclimatized. I don't, that's probably not the right word. I don't
Yeah,
want to
well, you adapted to it, right? Yeah.
adapt to it. Yeah. And
Mm,
so I thought I was okay. And then all of a sudden I've been like,
yeah,
oh my gosh. Oh, wait, I feel like me. There I am.
right.
Like even forgot what that even felt like. So it's
Interesting.
really,
Yeah, a couple dear friends and students came to a class the other day, and they just got out of like quarantine period because they flew over from Melbourne. Melbourne had it a lot worse than we've had it, and extended lockdowns and so forth. And they were really tripped out because Melbourne has had to isolate and the masks and all of that. And yeah, they were talking about how it really had taken its toll as well. And then coming here, going into quarantine, and then then opening up and coming to the class was quite overwhelming because we're all hugging and like just as per normal. It's pretty
Right?
trippy in that regard. And yeah, that it had taken its toll on them, and they were talking about that as well. And it's going to be interesting, it's going to be interesting because a lot of people maybe would find it hard to even just identify that, and it becomes the new normal. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds in terms of mental wellness and
Mental wellness and
everything.
just, yeah, human, even just like the way in which we've got accustomed to relating. Like, when I was in LA, yes, we do wear masks, are required to. And, but what I would still try to do is, like, from the person across the street that I'd see them, you try to smile through your eyes or wave so that there's some interaction. But most of the time you're met with, like, there's so much fear. So many of us are carrying that, like, people are almost like even from across the street are like turning
Right.
away from you and not even wanting to make eye contact with you. Like, somehow
Sure.
that's gonna, so it's gonna be really interesting of how we all, once we're able to even learn, like, social interact. Like, I'm so fascinated by, like, are we all gonna be socially awkward, or we
Hmm.
or just, is it going to be this because even here I've been like, are we elbow pumping, are we fist
Yeah.
pumping, are we air hugging? And then if someone would walk up and give you a hug and you're like, oh no, oh no, oh no.
Yeah. What a
Like, all of
trip.
it.
But let's talk about your book. I'm excited to hear the unfoldment of that. Is it done? Is the writing done?
Oh my, so the writing
Almost.
is complete. No, the writing is completely done. Turned in my final manuscript on September 25th. And I actually just got my last round of copyright edits back. So now I'm going through and, seeing all the commas and they're making it, grammatically correct, and obviously some small minor things, but not
Great.
small, not as small things, but like 6,000 of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm making my way through right now. And so now the final is due Monday, which is super
Can
cool because it's
can you spoil alert, or can you let us know what it's all about, or not so much?
of
No.
course, of course, of course.
Great.
Yes. The book is called Chakra Rituals,
Nice.
Awakening the Wild Woman Within.
Beautiful.
And yeah, the chakras have just been my own, like, personal beloved map that I have used for transformation. And from the first time I heard the word chakra, it just was like clicked
Mm.
into place. So for me, it's really the lens in which I see the world. It's the lens in which I look at my life. And I really see it as a map for empowerment and awakening. And so there's this real premise of the book that it's not about quote unquote chakra healing. It's about chakra awakening, because it's through my belief that we have to awaken before we can heal.
Mhm.
So there, it's like the preliminary, like, we have to come alive. We have to bring energy into all these different places of our body and wake up. And from that
Yeah.
place, sometimes we don't even know that we're dormant. We don't even know we're asleep. We don't even know that there's parts of us that aren't turned on. So how do we do that? And it is geared specifically through the lens of a woman. So I take a different, maybe a little different take than some other chakra books have gone before. And, I just felt that the time in the world we're in, it seemed very appropriate. And me being a woman, and I do share a lot of personal stories of my own
Great.
that I think are relevant to, thousands of women around the world. So
How
it's
exciting. That's really cool.
yeah, it's really exciting, and it's also been scary as hell. I know you've written a book, so I know you
Mhm.
get it. Right? Well, I shouldn't say no.
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
what
I
your book
do.
is
It's
like.
you get yourself into a very vulnerable position, but I think I th- I think it helps when you're doing the work that you're speaking of, when you've
Yeah.
woken up those aspects of yourself. For me, it's like that shit that does feel vulnerable and exposed.
Hmm.
It's like, who gives a shit anyway? Like, not
Yeah.
really that identified with it anyway. So
Yeah.
it just continues the work, really. Like, every time we get nervous and feel vulnerable, it's like, great, here's some more shit showing
Yeah.
up, and let's keep going.
Yeah. No, this was definitely I have not been this challenged in a long time, in
Yeah.
terms of, all the work I've done on myself, all the yoga and the yogic practices I've done on myself, all the therapy, all the healers, all the astrologers, the tarot reader, all of it, right? And there are things that I really thought were gone, and they popped their evil heads up, during
Yeah.
this process, so
Right.
it was, so it's also just that remembrance that there's always more work to be done, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be heavy, and it doesn't have to always be a hard and struggle, but it's like, okay, like, yes, we've come this far, or yes, this is what's happened today, but it doesn't mean that tomorrow we don't have to show up just as equally and powerfully and aware and as, conscious and connected.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that, hearing just the humility behind it and the honesty behind it. Because and that's one thing I appreciate about these long format conversations, is with all these great teachers and guides and mentors, we get to really see that humanness, because I think it's so easy when you read someone's book or just take their class and not maybe not really get to know them on a candid, deep level. We can tend to put them on a pedestal and like create this perfect image of them. But to hear people like you admit, like, now the work continues, and just be
Absolutely.
honest with it, and no big
Yeah.
deal. Let's just keep going, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And it's almost like the more aware you become, the more that you actually see how much more work you have to
Hmm.
do.
Yeah, and I guess it more enables us to see like the collective work. Like, it becomes, even in some regards, like less about us and more about like we. I guess the more awake and interconnected we do become, that gets revealed as well. It's not really such a selfish thing and just
Right.
about us. It becomes pretty big and all encompassing, I feel.
Absolutely. And we could even use this time as even an example of that, in the sense of like, I could even just map that onto what I just said about coming here and feeling like I was doing okay. And then had this like kind of collapse, so to speak.
Right.
And another way I thought of looking at it was like, it wasn't the reason I collapsed is because I also stepped out of the collective field of Los Angeles, and the
Mhm.
stress and the fear and the I mean, the city is in post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, from even the riots and the last 9 months have been really, really intense there. And I do think that collective really for me is feeling the anxiety and the fear of survival, fear of on every level. Am I going to lose my home? How am I going to support my family? How am I going to eat? Like real tribal fears that most of us have not felt at any time in our life, and then amplify that by the millions of people around you.
Mm.
It's like you could cut it with a knife. So
Yeah.
I think more than ever, experiences like this, as challenging as they are showing us that intra connectivity
Hmm.
between, and that interconnectivity between us all. And that um and it goes back to the personal as well too, like as we personally heal, that's going to ripple out as well too, right? As my energy
Hmm.
shifts, it's going to have an effect on that field too. So how do
That's
we,
right.
be in service of on both sides?
Hmm. Yeah. Where do you see LA going? I mean, I keep hearing it from dear friends. They're either already gotten out of there or trying to. These big cities such as LA, like, how are you
Mhm.
seeing it go down as this just keeps continuing and so many industries are kind of crumbling, especially in places like that? What are you seeing?
Well, I don't know how much longer it can go on. I mean, there's, you think there's going to be a glimmer of hope of some kind of government aid coming through, but a lot of people have been waiting on that since end of July, and our governments, for whatever reason, can't come to a conclusion on how to, help people. And that's not just obviously LA, that's the United States in general, but California has been hit especially hard because our, like it or not, the governor has taken a really strong, hard stance. So what we've been dealing with is very different than, say, the people in Texas. or the people in Florida, or the people that they just like, there are certain states where people, they're not even telling you to wear a mask.
Right.
And we will actually get fined if we get caught without a mask outside. It's not, you won't be allowed in a store that is allowed to be open without a mask on, you know? Most businesses are closed except for essential businesses. And then there's some shops, I don't even know how they've decided whom, that are open to 20%. And, you know, our restaurants are closed except for takeout, blah, blah, blah. I don't know how any of these small businesses are, anyone who is in leases or has multiple locations of restaurants or yoga studios or fitness, like it's already, so many are folding, right? Like Yoga Works, one of the kind of, you know, go-to yoga places in all of, not just California, not just Los Angeles, but all of California. Even there's many locations all throughout the US they've claimed bankruptcy to get out of their leases, you know, businesses that have been existing for 30 years. And it's really, really sad. And I don't know what the answer is, because also like everyone's trying to figure out how to put their businesses online, but what if you don't have the resources to even begin to do that? Like, how do you just tell people, okay, you have to reinvent yourself now? You know, how do you do that? So I don't know what these, I know the next month is going to be rough for sure. With the holidays coming, the restrictions are probably going to get even worse because they're trying to tell people not even to gather for the holidays. And, you know, it's Hanukkah and then Christmas and the New Year. And so I would be lying if I said I'm excited to go back to, you know, California for the New Year.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be back there. I'm going to go see my family first for Christmas. And then I'll head back to LA, at least as of right now. I mean, that could change as well, but, you know, and the restrictions keep changing too. Like there might be a point where I'm not allowed to go back or, you know, or if I go back, then I have to, if I go back, I have to quarantine for 14 days regardless of where I'm coming from. But so I mean, I'm just, when I am home, I do try to support the little coffee shops, the little restaurants that I would normally eat at. I order my takeout from there, and I try to walk around the block and, you know, share some good spirit if I can. But it's, at the end of the day, what do you do? I mean, this is becoming an economic pandemic as much as it is a health pandemic. Like, I think the umbrella of what we're now considering wellness has gotten much larger. You know, that wellness is not now just going to yoga and drinking your green juice, right? Like, wellness is everything. And I don't know. For me, I don't see the vaccine as just being this magic pill that all of a sudden everything's going to be fine. Like, how is everything fine?
Yeah, it's got to be much deeper than that.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And yoga studios, I mean, you were deeply involved with most likely the most popular, best yoga studio in the world, really, Exhale. And I mean, in its heyday, that was the place to be. And I mean, even that went down a few years ago. And so it's tough anyway, just to run a yoga studio, and you know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is almost making yoga studios a thing of the past, especially in the US, right?
I mean, I feel like the wellness or the fitness and yoga industry are forever changed. And there's some benefits of that for sure, because so many people who would have never turned to online platforms, right? They would have never, I don't want to take a class from a computer screen. I don't want to do it from my TV. They would have never tried it, right? And now if you're want to practice and you don't have a home practice and you just want to, you know, to be led by someone in whatever arena of fitness and yoga, this is your option, right? And at least a lot of the places. And I think a lot of people are seeing like, oh, this isn't bad. Like, this is really cool. Like, oh, I can do a 30-minute class. I can do a 90-minute class. How much time do I have? And I can now take out the half hour it took to get to the yoga studio, the half hour it took to get home. So I do have like hope that more people are actually going to be practicing than ever before, even if it's for shorter periods of time. Because I don't know about you, how many times have you heard the excuses like, oh, I don't have 90 minutes to take a yoga class, or I don't have, it's my whole day if I go to yoga. But now, because of people's attention spans obviously shorter online too, and you get distracted quicker, you know, we are seeing these array of different lengths of class. Of course, there are other platforms that have been doing it forever and doing it really well. But now there's just such access. And so my hope is that actually more people are going to be making time for it in their life. And then I kind of, the way I imagine it is, even when the world opens up in some capacity, and the people that are able to make it and they want to keep their doors open, is even the small experience of what I've had here, of being able to share with a few people live. And they haven't been like big classes, just been literally a few people, but it's just that connection that you can feel something online for sure, but it's not the same. So I imagine maybe, you know, maybe you'll do twice a week at home, and then maybe once a week you go to the local studio, or once a month you go to the local studio. But I don't know how many businesses can stay open that way. But I can't imagine people just now being like, oh, I'm not doing yoga online or fitness online, I'm now going to the gym or the studio. Also for price, for economic reasons. You know, great online platforms can be as cheap as $20 a month, you know, and you know, a studio could be $120 to $250 a month. So at that, I think is also going to weigh in. And but you know, I miss teaching people. I miss hearing people breathe. You know, I miss being able to put my hands on people, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And I also know how much, selfishly, how much I receive back from my students. Like I receive so, even if they don't talk to me, like just being in the presence of these people that are just there to be on their mat and breathe and practice with you. Like you get so much back. And I at least haven't figured out how to feel that yet through this portal.
No, neither.
You know?
I mean,
Yeah.
it is an interesting mystery, this portal. Like
Yeah.
it still trips me out, even though I do it nearly every day in one way or another. It trips me out that it's even possible. Like it's so cool, like just to look at objectively. And sometimes it does get really deep and like soul connected, and it's such a
Yeah.
mystery. I do think every now and then I entertain the possibility that it is opening up a deeper interconnectivity. It's like training our mind to get into that telepathic, like, no, we actually are fully connected. It doesn't matter that you're over the other side of the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does feel a bit like that in
Yeah.
a trippy, mysterious way. So who knows, huh?
Yeah. And to just to speak on that as well, like the other plus side of it is the fact that we can be doing this right now, that you can be in Australia, I can be in Mexico, and it's like I could high five you right now. You know, and that part's amazing. And one of the online things I've been doing for the last 9 months is I'm doing these yoga dance experiences.
Yeah, they're great. I've been watching
Which
that.
I would
Amazing.
have never imagined that could work online ever.
Yeah.
And the company I'm doing it through actually contacted me before COVID happened. And they're like, would you be interested? And I literally was like, I literally told them they were crazy. I was like, no, this is an in-person experience. It cannot work online. And then COVID hit and I was like, maybe I should try.
And it's worked, huh?
And it's still, it's different. It's different than the in-person experience, but it works. Like it works. And to see people from all over the world, literally, who never could all be at one event or it would be very difficult for them to all be at one event at the same time in person. That part has been cool. And I've been doing them with my DJ partner, Marcus Wyatt. We have a collective we created called Deep Exhale. And when he travels all over the world DJing and I travel all over teaching yoga. So, but we've done a lot of events not together, right? But people hear about him and people hear about me. So now like places that he hasn't come to with me in Europe or wherever else, you know, they're coming, or people that know from his Instagram that he plays. His goal is he wants to get all the club kids and the burners onto the yoga mat. And I want to get the yoga people basically off the mat.
Yeah. That's so
uh,
cool. I love that.
so that's been cool that we've had people from everywhere, from Switzerland to China to Mexico to LA, to all at the same time. And that the energy is palatable in a different way than it is in person. But I was one of the people that was like, oh, there's no way this could work. And then I got faced with, okay, either teach the event or stop doing this for now. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And I was
Amazing.
shocked. Yeah. So there's definitely been good that's come out of it. And sometimes I have to remember that a little bit more
And you've
clearly.
got one more for the year, right?
Yeah, my
This will be
last one.
coming out after it, but I'll do a little
Yeah, I
shout
assume
out
so.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back. We'll be back at it. We're actually, I believe we're going to be doing one New Year's Day, and
Great.
as long as we're in this kind of situation, we'll keep them going probably once a week or at least every other week.
And because we do similar immersions, it feels like a similar vibe to what you do,
Yeah.
you know, incorporating the dance and just a full. We look at it a bit like a ceremony. It's like a
Yeah.
real deep dive
Yeah.
into ceremony
Yeah.
and dancing and just shaking it off in a whole wide variety of ways. And I'd love to hear how you actually got into it. How did it evolve? How did you feel grounded in bringing that into the world?
Um, yeah, I'm happy to share. It was literally all an experiment. But as a young girl, I was a dancer. My mom had a dancing school. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and we lived in an apartment on top of the studio. So the studio was our playground because we lived a very sheltered, protected childhood. So literally, that's, instead of going to the park, we played with the records and we danced. And then, as most girls do, they have some kind of thing with their moms. They don't want to be anything like their mothers. And a series of things happened, and I literally stopped dancing because I didn't want to be anything like my mother. Like, literally just done. And I was very strong-willed, so I guess I like programmed this in me for a very long time. And even when I was like in college, like the only way I would dance is if I had like several drinks in me. And then something happened around, I don't know, early 20s, or maybe around the time I was getting out of college, that the urge to be dancing again was just like, I didn't have the words for it, but I would be in my apartment and I'd just be like dancing like crazy. And I did start to go out to clubs and want to dance. And when I gave myself permission to be wild and free and dance the way I was in my apartment, the attention that I attracted was not positive. You know, it was either girls like being not so nice, or men making very unwanted advances at me, like to the point where they said, well, if you don't want my attention, you shouldn't be dancing like that.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, like it was really bad. And I was like, well, what the heck? Like I can't go to the club where the good music is. So I guess I'm just going to be dancing. You know, it's more fun to dance with people, as we know. And I actually I was doing yoga at this time, and someone brought me to an ecstatic dance, and I had no idea what ecstatic dance was. Actually, it wasn't ecstatic dance. It was Shiva Rea's yoga trance dance, but some people call them the same thing. So it was actually her trance dance. And at first I was like, what is going on? We were like rolling around on the floor, and it was dark, and there were like lights like twinkling around. And I was scared. I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm in the right place. And then before long because it was dark, I think it really helped. I was dancing like my heart out. Like I was dancing like I hadn't danced ever before. And I felt safe. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be doing more of this. And then, I don't know the time frame of how all this unfolded, but I'm teaching, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm seeing so much like rigidity and so much like perfection trying to be made in the room, where people aren't breathing, and they're just, I feel like people are adding more stress into the body in a different way.
Mhm.
And to me, yoga is an embodiment practice and a liberation practice. We have to have both for it to be yoga. And so I was like, okay, these people, I guess, are getting in their body, but then they're not finding freedom. There's no liberation happening. So I just started to play. Like, I started with just shaking. So I would look around the room and I was like, okay, what? They're not, I ran the studio. So if someone complained about the class, it was going to come back to me. And I would I mean, at that time, I probably would have just stopped doing it, but I was going to know if it worked or not. So I literally would put on a track. Like, if I felt the class was, and I'd be like, okay, we're just going to do something a little different now. Let's come to the top of the mat. And I was like, just shake out your hands. All right. Yeah. Just like that. Now shake them a little harder, and I would put on like a fun, vibrant drumming or something, act like one of those kinds of tracks that if you have any sense of like music moving you, like your body's going to start to pulse, right? And then I'd move it into the shoulders and the chest. And next thing you know, like their whole body's shaking. And I would only do it for like a minute or two. That was it. Just like, boop, just to see. And sometimes half the class would resist, or, people would be looking around. Okay, the person in front of me is doing it, so I'll do it, like little popcorn style, like activations happening. And then I would just, after the minute, I would just like slowly turn down the music and have them stop and just pause and feel the difference. And most of the time, now half the people are smiling, like their chest is now, they're actually breathing heavily from shaking so much that I can actually see their chest moving. And I was like, huh. And the energy in the room was different. I was like, okay, now let's go again. Inhale, arms up, blah, blah, blah. And that's literally how it started. And Marcus, who's still my DJ partner in this, I was a fan of him. I would go to clubs to like follow him basically. And what was different about going to his events was people actually went there to dance.
Mhm.
And there were still people drinking and doing whatever, but it wasn't like people, maybe they were picking up on people, but it wasn't that kind of scene. People were going there to like throw down, like sometimes it'd be circles and you'd be like, it looked like people just came out of a music video or something. Like people were just going to dance. And at that point, I didn't even know he was a yogi. I just knew him as this DJ. And then I started like running into like other yoga people I knew. I was like, what are you doing here?
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, well, Mark. And I'm like, yeah. And long story long, we finally met. And by the time we met, like we both equally knew of each other. And literally with the same idea, I was like, I want to do this. And he wanted to do it. Like his initiative was like, I want to get the club kids and the burners on the mat to like experience this side of yoga. And I was like, okay, well, I want to get the yogis off the mat to experience the freedom and the liberation,
Yeah, wow.
the expression, the power that comes through you. And that's how, and then we just did our first event.
That's
That was
great. I love
April of
that.
2013 at Exhale. Yeah.
Amazing. Very cool. And you're so right. And I see a similar thing. And both through that type of movement, shaking, dancing, and also sound, like I find
Sound
it,
is huge.
yeah, singing or even just random sounds, like
Mhm.
how that can penetrate that deep rigidity, that tension that quite often the yoga asana just doesn't quite get it unless they're really persistent and really taking it earnestly and doing the breathing
Yeah.
properly. But I see it a lot as well. Like we'll be doing an asana sequence and like, come on, like even counting out the breathing and really helping guide them into shaking off that tension. And then, yeah, something like that. Let's just shake for a minute,
Yeah.
for two, or now longer. As you get more comfortable with it, you can
Right.
just keep going.
Keep
But
going.
that just penetrates it so quick, and
It's
sound
so
like,
quick.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. The shaking with sound, I don't think
yeah.
there's I don't think there's anything quicker to shift the energy in your own body, in your own
Hmm.
psyche. And then with a collective group, it's so simple. Like anybody can do it, but it's so, so powerful. And it could be shaking off anything. It could be the rigidity, it could be the perfectionism, it could be all the ways in which like you're veiling and hiding like your true self from like your own expression, right? Like it opens up a doorway to whatever freedom. And I also believe it opens up a doorway to our power, because like if we're on lockdown, so is our power, so is our
Yeah.
emotion, so is like everything that's in this vessel of our body. So we'll feel more alive, we'll feel more connected to our emotions, we'll feel more powerful, we'll feel more confident, we'll feel more courageous to actually be who we are. Like
I
it's
I get it
clearly
though. Like
clearly I think it clearly I think it's
it's so powerful. I agree. And but I also get how scary it can be to take that initial leap and leap after leap after leap to keep diving in. And it does feel vulnerable at first, being seen and or being scared to be seen, because no one gives a
Mhm.
crap anyway, like really.
Right.
And for
Well, no,
people that,
everyone's so concerned about them, they don't actually even
yes,
see you.
exactly. And oh, it is so beautiful when people do take that leap
Yeah.
and just shake it off and open the heart and become present, like what's holding us back from truly being present and in that power that you're speaking of. And it is really cool to see you just rocking it with these platforms, because it's so
Thank
powerful
you.
and beautiful, and now putting it into a book, which I'm really excited to read. And I really, zooming back to what you said, like before we I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly how you put it, but before we can do that work on the chakras, we really need to wake up.
Mhm.
And it's true. Like, I think it's a very seductive trap to keep working on ourselves,
Mhm.
kind of in that perfectionistic trip.
Mhm.
Like, there's always something to fix. But unless we wake up
Mhm.
and see it for what it truly is, where it's going to be an endless rat race. It's just going to be a whole nother ego trip of
Right.
constantly trying to fix shit, that whole spiritual ego thing. So I
Yeah.
really did appreciate how you came straight to that before the true deep healing can take place. We got to wake up. I love that.
Yeah. Like we have to come alive. Like
Hmm.
we have to like that's what I believe. Like I think Joseph Campbell says it perfectly. Like he says like I don't think people are actually seeking the meaning of life. They're seeking the rapture of
Right.
feeling alive.
Hmm.
The rapture of being alive. And I think that that word for me, rapture, is just like is so it holds so much, and it's so true. I mean, I think so many people at different points in their life, right? We feel numb, we feel disconnected, we've reached our goals, we've tried through the lens of success and validation and perfectionism and whatnot, and maybe we've made a lot of money, maybe we've been the CEO or the whatever, but you're left with, was this all there is? And then we're drinking more to feel something else, we're having sex with more people to feel something, like, or we're trying to be a bit more perfect to fix something else, right? And
Hmm.
but it's actually, and again, easier said than done, and I'm not saying I have it all figured out. Like it is a day to day, it is a day by day practice, it is
Hmm.
a day by day awakening and a day by day commitment to it. But like, we're only given so many days to be alive, so I want to live them, no matter how hard that is. Like, no matter how hard it is, like I don't want to live a life of being lulled to sleep. And that's where, for me, the energy of the chakras, it's dynamic, it's movement, like it's spinning vortexes of energy. And if the vortex isn't moving, you basically die, right? Like if our prana that's flowing through our body is never still, right, it will fluctuate and move in all different spirals and different configurations. But life is movement, right? And it doesn't mean it has to be ecstatic movement. It could be slow, pulsating, beautiful. There's all ranges and all
Hmm.
forms. But I really feel, as we can come, if we can begin to get connected, if we can learn to know ourselves, right? To really know ourselves and know that we're not just one thing, right? That we are made up of all these sacred elements. We're the earth, we're the water, we're the fire, we're the air, the space, where our physical body, our emotional body, our energetic body, our product. I mean, we're all of it, right? The knowledge body, the bliss body. We're all of these things. We're not just one thing, but we so often let one thing define us. And when we can start to activate and learn that, oh, okay, like I can start to pay attention and feel, and this is just the easy example right now because I've never dealt with anxiety before in my life until now, at least to my knowledge, but I've been dealing with it now during this pandemic. And so for me, it's like, oh, I can tune in and be like, what is this energy? Okay, well, clearly I'm not in my body, I'm not grounded. Like, what can I do so I can get myself grounded in my body? Like, does that mean I have to work on some breathing, slow down my breathing, exhale out through the mouth? Do I need to do some movement? Do I need to move slowly, feel my feet on the ground? Do I have the luxury of going outside and putting my feet in the earth? Like, how do we take these things and actually give ourselves, our own medicine to just help us along this path? And it's not a substitution for therapy. It's not a substitution for any of the other things you're doing in your life. But I think the chakras itself, I know I'm rambling, but the chakras itself are
Oh, it's a good
really
ramble. Keep rambling.
contain a really amazing framework in which we can know ourselves, we can grow ourselves, we can come fully embodied. We can come fully embodied. And I believe only through coming fully embodied also, that's really how we also reach true liberation. I don't believe that we're transcending the body. I feel like it's from the lived experience of it all. It's I think those are the doorways into the liberation, the freedom, is the
Agreed.
challenges, the obstacle, is the love, is the sadness, is the despair, all gateways into actually the highest liberation.
Yeah. Boom. Totally. And it's a reoccurring theme, actually. It keeps coming up in conversation.
Mm,
This old uh, kind of model of the spiritual paths being all about transcendence,
yeah.
being all about really getting out of the body. Because
Hmm.
yes, the body is complex and there's so many different energies at play, and it is pretty seductive. And I've done this trip as well of trying to really go beyond the body and
Hmm.
really um
Weren't you going to
just
become a monk or something at one point? Weren't you like
well
almost on that path?
not I was heading on that path,
Okay.
like not exactly, but before I met Joe I was definitely living that lifestyle, and it was
Yeah.
it was beautiful, it's
Yeah.
very simple, and I was
Hmm.
just naturally going in that direction. During that phase in my life, I mean, I was surrounded by beautiful women, but
Hmm.
wasn't really attracted to anyone, didn't feel like dating, and I was just living pretty
Hmm.
much organically. I started living a pretty renunciate life.
Hmm.
So none of it was even intentional, but as
Hmm.
I kept doing the yoga practice and feeling the freedom, the liberation of who I am beyond the body, it was just like, yeah, this is great. And it was a beautiful time of like a lot of freedom and not many responsibilities, though. And I wasn't very grounded. It's true. But it was a great time of getting to know who I am beyond the body. But I also see the kind of trap of that.
Hmm.
Um, of then not being very functional as a human being. And
Yeah.
as we've seen so much, one can be pretty skillful at transcending and pretty wise in the kind of the spiritual and kind of astral realms and whatnot, but then be like a dickhead human being and
Mhm.
like abusive and cruel. And we see that so much, and it's been good that that's all been very visible and out in the open,
Yeah.
because it's one thing to like wake up and transcend. It's a whole nother thing to then, yeah, like you said, be embodied. And I agree, working through the chakras is a great framework. It's a great map for both getting in touch with who we are beyond the body, at the same time bring it back in through the body and be here be grounded, be in relationship with life. And I resonate with it deeply. So it's really exciting that you're diving into that and offering it out.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I really like about, like, it's as much as the path up as it is the path down. Like, one is not, there's no hierarchy. And even though, like, we could say like one is higher than two, it goes upward, but it goes downward. Like, actually, there's no hierarchy really, even amongst, is the heart better than the crown, or is the crown better than the root? They're all, each one, it holds its own unique intelligence, right?
Totally.
And when we can activate that power, it's just like boom, another circuit, turns on, and we have access to so much more. And in terms of, like, I also really like to think of, the pathway down is also the pathway of, manifesting our dreams into reality. Like, a lot of us can have great visions, right? Or great ideas, but then they just stay great ideas and great visions, right? And I really think also the work of the chakra system, moving it downward, that's how we can ground our dreams, ground our manifestations into the tangible form. And yeah, I literally I think it can be mapped on the global, everything that's happening. I haven't read it, but Anadea Judith actually wrote a book.
Yeah,
She's
Wheels of Life. It's a good book.
No, not the Wheels of. She actually.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, she's written a gajillion amazing books.
The other one, Waking the Global Heart.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great
And
book.
she's been doing a lot of speaking on that lately, of like what's happening collectively from the chakra perspective. It's quite interesting. So
it's interesting.
Limitless how we can map it. And use it as it doesn't have to be this woo-woo thing. It can be very practically applied, and be tangible tools for now.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny that it gets put into a bit of a woo-woo category, because it is so immediate. It's so here and all encompassing. So
and it's sexy and it's cool, and it's, like, it has all that,
right.
It's also energy. So it's like, I can't reach out and touch your chakra.
True.
You might be able to feel it, but you're not. But it's like
that's
the
true.
flame here, right? I can admire it, but if I can't touch the heat that it generates, so I think anything in that perspective makes it.
That's true.
Woo-woo for some.
Yeah, mysterious, subtle.
For the woo-woo curious.
Yeah. Now, back to your journey of how this is all unfolded. So in those early days where you started just exploring the shakedown and bringing it in, were there people complaining?
No, but like, so, you could, and it's still, even now, like, people that don't know me that show up in a class of mine. And just so you know, for those of you that are listening that don't know me, I am also a fan of asana. I do practice asana, and I love asana. So I'm not poo-pooing asana. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying don't practice. This is just another way we can play. And from my perspective, like, any embodiment work is yoga. Like, I really believe that. So dance is just a huge outlet for me for expression, embodiment, release, and connection. So even now, what I'm saying is, like, sometimes that we're in one of those experiences and people didn't know they were in for that. Like, and we start shaking or whatever, even if you're like making someone do like hip circles, right? Some people like freak out. You want me to unshake my pelvis in public? It's like, you're just, they think you're insane, right?
Yeah.
So I think of it as, I remember that first time I was on the floor in Shiva Rea's class, and I was like, literally, like, she's telling me to roll around, and I'm like, this woman's crazy. And I try to remember that. And I still had a very powerful experience. So I do try to, I normally am over the top, but because I feel like the more over the top I am, it gives them permission to be anywhere in between. But I also feel like, it may not, it may never be for them, but B, it's just, it's not where they are today. So if they choose not to come back. So I think more so than them complaining, because I didn't do it in every class, right? So I think more so than anyone like complaining if the people really didn't dig it, they just didn't come back to my class.
Mhm.
And I have to also say the Yoga Studio of Exhale Center for Sacred Movement was probably, even though it was one of the most world renowned, there was a lot of, we could say at that time, it wouldn't be as much now, but at that time, unconventional things
True.
happening.
Mhm.
So that gave me a kind of freedom that I would not have had if I didn't grow up in those
Mhm.
rooms. You know, with these pioneer teachers that were breaking every rule, so to speak, right, of what classical yoga was and looked like. I mean,
Right.
we had kirtans and ecstatic dance before anybody knew what they were. From Shiva Rea to Saul David Raye to Joe Tastula to
Mhm.
Eric Schiffman to sometimes you didn't know if there was going to be a puja, you didn't know if you were going to be doing asana, you didn't know if you were going to be singing. So
What a
our
time, huh?
our students were they were probably more open than most. So
Mhm.
I was in a situation that I thought I could explore. You know, if I was teaching at, a very traditional studio that didn't use music or didn't do any other things beyond the straight up, sun salutation A and B, then I probably wouldn't have even had the courage to do it myself, let alone, um, let alone like me even dance, in
Yeah,
class. So I
because
think I
that's
was
what's
also very much a product of my environment.
yeah, that's cool.
Whoever
Because that's what's coming
inspired.
to mind is quite a few teacher friends have brought up the predicament of like feeling something coming through them, that an authentic offering that they want to teach, but they're scared of changing things up in the fear
Yeah.
of losing students. That seems to be a common fear. So I've got teachers in mind, because I know a lot of teachers listen to this, of
Mhm.
that kind of those leaps in our own evolution of that kind of fork in the road. Do we be authentic with what we feel is true in this moment, or do we do what's safer, you know?
Yeah, well, I feel I got incredible training on this because I was in a very interesting position. Yes, I was a teacher, but first and foremost, I was the person who ran that business, right? And again, these were some of the most formidable teachers in the US at that time that people from all over the world were coming, and they were changing the way they taught.
Mhm.
I remember when Saul David Raye, some of you might know him, he was teaching regular, he's also a kirtan singer. And at that time, he did kirtans and he did yoga. He never mixed the two. Maybe he would play their harmonium and om at the beginning, maybe a loka samasta. That was it. And then one day, and he was scared. He was like, this is what his heart was really calling him to do. This was the devotion of the yoga that was speaking through him. But he felt the same way. I have
Mhm.
hundreds of people in my classes. And one day he just decided to go for it. And yeah, sure, he lost some people, but he got 10 times the amount of people back because it was so authentically in alignment with what he was. And people can feel that.
Mhm.
And I think if you lose the notion of the risk of the people you might lose, you're going to open up a field of people that you're going to attract that maybe never would have found you. And I saw that happen with Shiva. I saw Shiva Rea. I saw that happen with so many. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Shiva one time of, I don't know, I'm teaching differently now. I don't know what people are going to think, or people are going to want me to teach the old way. And she said the words back to me: if I continue to teach the own way, I won't be teaching anymore in 5 years. She's like, like yoga is a living, breathing, moving thing, and it's ever evolving, just like our consciousness is ever evolving. So if I keep trying to stay like this, like, I think that's when people get burnt out, when they're just going through the motions. They're not actually allowing themselves to evolve or giving themselves permission for whatever reason. But I could also speak to any time that I've taken the chance to authentically really bring forth what I've wanted to bring forth, like doors have opened in a whole different way, and in a way that I wouldn't have imagined. Like same thing with this book. Like it just was like divine grace fell into my lap, and same with these dance events. Like I didn't know what I was doing, but I just felt so strongly about offering them. And it's become one of the most powerful things I think I share. So I would encourage you to allow yourself to evolve, allow yourself to transform, allow yourself to, like if it's calling to your soul to do something different, it's because something now is new and awakened in you from your embodied, integrated, all the yoga that you've done. Don't ignore that call.
Love it. Yes. Cristi, you've got such high energy. I'm wondering if you always run on this type of high vitality, high energy, or is that your kind of default, or do you ebb and flow? Do you have like a stillness practice as well that helps you keep going the way you go? Or what's your flow?
Yeah, I mean, I get activated through like when I'm with, and I'm very like, believe it or not, it's more one. I mean, obviously, yes, when it's groups, but one-on-one is where I really get activated. I do, like, I'm definitely like an extroverted introvert. So I do have, like, people sometimes are surprised that, like, I'll leave a party, and I'll go back to my hotel room early and sleep. And I do have periods of where I'm silent, so to speak. I'm not as much still, but I do have a very committed meditation practice. But normally my meditation, I'm always, even you can see how I'm sitting here, I'm always in flow. My meditation teacher is Dr. Lauren Roche. You may know his book, The Radiant Mudras. And when I first started working with him, actually I wasn't working with him. He came to do a workshop at the studio at Exhale.
He's on here next, actually. We were just talking.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's one of my primary teachers and mentors. And one time, I write about this in the book, actually, he asked me if I meditated. And at that point in time, I was trying to meditate, but I would literally sit there and, be looking at the clock and, couldn't do it right, so to speak. So he asked me if I meditated, and I was like, do I lie to the meditation teacher? Like, what do I do? And I said, sure, I try to meditate, but I'm not good at it. And he asked, well, how do you meditate? So I sat down on the floor in my office, which I know you've seen. And I was in the most upright position I could muster, hands in, Yana Mudra, like this, And he said, Cristi, okay, get up, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, how long have I known you? And at that time it was a couple of years. I was like, I don't know, a couple of years. And he's like, I don't think I've ever seen you be still for 1 second or one moment of that time. So why would you assume that you have to be still when you're meditating? And I was like, and then, I mean, this is almost 10 years ago now, that no one was talking like that. I was like, what do you, like, the only version of meditation you saw was exactly what I demonstrated to him. And so he actually has given me just permission to, like, I sit a lot. Sometimes I stand, but I sit a lot, but I just allow my body to move however it wants to move. So it's more slow. And then sometimes it does turn into more of like, I literally imagine it just like Shakti's dancing me. So it's really slow, and, it just kind of comes out in different ways. So I definitely
think that's beautiful. Yeah.
And now I enjoy meditating, where before it was like, I felt like I was like being punished by like the principal at school or going to detention.
Right.
Or something,
Well, I mean, that is a classical approach to meditation, whether we look at the classical yoga meditations or Zazen. I mean, and it can be effective, that kind of old, fierce approach. It can be eventually. But yeah, I dig that. That's really refreshing, really beautiful. And I mean, if we do look at the body as, I mean, for one, predominantly water, and then get into the subtle, wiggly, just dynamic flow of energy, it makes sense. Like, if you're feeling that energy flow, like, rock with it, flow with it. And I totally get that. I love that.
Yeah. And I like, and, Lauren, I know we'll talk about this. There isn't, I think the real freedom with it, just like yoga, there's so many different styles of yoga we can practice. And I think within meditation that there's been this lens of this is the way to do it. Right. And I think there's we have to find our own way to meditate, and sometimes I always do, I do grounding cord meditations, even just for a moment, just to feel that boom, especially if I'm feeling ungrounded at all. So, I mean, I am still at times, but it doesn't mean what I do is right and what you do is wrong. Like there's this whole infinite way in which we can access and we can plug in to receive and to be nourished. And it might look different from person to person, and it might look different even from day to day.
Yeah.
So I think I've been really lucky to have teachers like Lauren, have teachers like Shiva, have teachers like Saul that are very exploratory. And that's been really, really amazing for me.
Yeah. It's so huge. Even just what you just said then, like that wide array of how we can practice. I mean, the tribalism that has come into these practices, it's been so thick for so long. And again, I get it. It feels good when you've hit something that works. And like it is another seductive ego trip to then become overly self-righteous about it. This is the way, and if you're doing it differently, you're doing it wrong. You're going to hell. You're not a good like it can get real thick.
Like you're not a good meditator, you're not a good I mean, and we cause more abuse on ourselves than we're already faced with. I like, just like we're going to teach triangle, like we're going to have people's hips hinge differently, we're going to have their hamstrings of different lengths and different flexibilities. We're not going to make them pop their hamstring and have to do the pose perfect.
Yeah.
So why would we do the same thing in meditation? I mean, if we compared it that way.
Yeah. This has been so cool. We could just keep talking, but I want to respect your time. Is there anything you want to let our listeners know about when the book's coming out, your next offering, everything? Lay it all out, please.
So believe it or not, I haven't announced this publicly yet because my book actually doesn't officially come out until June 15th, but it's actually already on Amazon.
Oh, hello. Pre-order.
So it is already available for pre-order. And I will be doing a beautiful pre-order campaign that you'll get all kinds of goodies. So if you do decide to support me and buy it now, you'll still be eligible to get all the great things that you're going to get as a little bonus for supporting. And so, yeah, if anyone's interested in the work on the chakras and through the lens specifically of the woman, I would be honored to share these teachings with you. And just
I'm going to dive in anyway, by the way. Sorry to cut you off.
And you can. You totally can.
There's been a couple of books that I've read that have been aimed at women, and I've read it, and it's been actually really profound as a man to read it from that lens. So I dig that you've channeled that particularly for women, but I think men, it's good for us to dive into that perspective like deeply as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone can buy. And Instagram is always a great place to connect. I normally do share all my events there. I respond to all my messages. So I just want to say hi. I love to hear from people. And just continue ever growing and ever evolving and ever navigating this wild and wacky time we're in, and to see where we end up. So I hope that there'll be a time in the not so distant future where I'll actually be able to around you and your beautiful beloved, who I've had so many adventures with.
Yeah. She sends her love.
And beautiful girls. The most beautiful angelic family on the planet Earth.
Love. Thank you. We miss you, and all the best with the rest of your time in Mexico for now, and your transition back into California with the family, and be well. And good luck with the book. And so great to connect. Much love, Cristi. More soon.